But there's a lot to chew on with Apple.
There's a lot to chew on.
Given what happened, and then the comeback, and then Cook.
And I think what Cook's really telling everybody is, hey, calm down. Let's not just knee-jerk on every single thing that you hear about what's going on here. And by the way, you guys are still focusing, and he's been on this for a long time. And you've heard me talk about wearables. So it's services and wearables. And when you look at everything not iPhone, they had 19% growth this past year, $100 billion business. So it's not as if this is a company that's just iPhone. I know it's 60%. I get it. But if you look at where they're seeing their growth still, Scott, they're getting it in other places. And I think Tim's basically trying to tell everybody, hey, look, we're becoming like a healthcare company based on our wearable side. And on top of that, we've got our services recurring revenue side as well. So there is a lot to chew on there. And for the short-term investors, absolutely. They are just reading these these headlines, selling.
Yeah.
But the idea is the upside.
Not Steve Weiss, though.
That's just a sycophantic, look at the company. If any other CEO came out and said what he said, you'd say there's no substance and he's a cheerleader, and that's what he's been. Bottom line, it is 60%. iPhone sales do drive growth in services. So let's take a look at it. In China, their market share is down. It's not because of the U.S., because of our tariffs. It's because China's telcos cut subsidies. They've been cutting them since 2014, and the government said cut them another 20%. It's because the phones are $1,000. So their strategy was flawed. So any other consumer products company, you could look at Zenith, doesn't exist. RCA doesn't exist. Look at Sony. Look at Samsung. They come up with more feature-rich products. They come out at high prices, then the prices go down because they're commodities.
But if you're hating all over it, why'd you buy it?
Because it's a trade. Because the sentiment got so negative. And I've been dead right on Apple for all the right reasons. When Katie Huberty put out a big report in China last year saying it's amazing growth opportunities, it's going to blow the wheels off, I said that's not true. Okay, so I've been dead right on it for the right reasons. And right now, I think it's a trade because sentiment's so negative.
How long are you going to be in it, you think?
I have no idea. I mean, if you start hearing everybody talking like Pete, then I'll get out a lot sooner.
He's been saying this for a long time. Well, he's talking 1 year, and he's a perfect example. Absolutely perfect example.
Thank you.
He's been right for 1 year. Some of us have been in this stock since the 90s, 1990s, not 90s in price. And so what I'm telling you is you're not looking far enough, but you're not looking far enough ahead in terms of what is their next act. And their next act is coming with the wearables and with the services.
I would argue I'm looking further ahead.
Oh, I disagree with you.
They missed on innovation. Hold on. They missed on their home speakers. A dud. Amazon came out with it. Google is out with it. Apple's last. They're not going to launch a 5G phone until a year after maybe everybody else launches. 5G is going to be the biggest thing to hit us. AirPods, if you listen to the call.
So your focus is still on phones, right?
I think the CEO is mediocre. He came out in his announcement and said he's mediocre. You don't sit with $236 billion in cash when you could have bought Netflix for $50 billion.
There's where we actually agree, Steve and I. We've disagreed on a lot of different things over the years, but acquisitions of something, when we said it on the air, when Netflix was trading under $70 a share, we were like, you know what, this is the perfect match to go in with Apple.
So you mean tell me he couldn't find a major acquisition that would earn him more than the 25 bips he was getting on his cash? Number one. Number two, in the report, the quarterly report came out for Christmas, they were supply constrained on AirPods, on Macs, on watches, on everything but iPhones, where they built too many of them. So they've got a flawed strategy, in my view, on their phone, maximizing prices without adding real features. And you've got a guy who is a supply and lie guy, right? Who can't get the supply
you'd be hard
correct.
Look, I always find myself in this position, and I don't want to be in the position of having to sit here and defend Tim Cook. There are others who are better suited to do that, and those who have skin in the game in the stock who can do it in their own right. But I can think of a lot of CEOs that maybe would fall into the category of mediocre. I'm not sure that picture right there in the upper right corner would fit into that category. If you look at any of the
He's
the
trading
metrics,
up the legacy of Steve Jobs.
Yeah, but that only lasts for a certain amount of time. Okay?
Exactly. We're seeing it unravel.
Steve Jobs has passed a long time ago.
We're seeing it unravel. Everything else was in the pipeline.
So they've got $100 billion in revenue for other business outside of the iPhone, and you're saying he's not executing.
Well, and I think this is an interesting point.
Exactly.
Because there's a lot of, I can't help but see the analogy between what Apple is going through and what China is going through. There's a lot of connection between the company and that country right now in the news, but China is transitioning from this manufacturing country to more services and consumer-based. And Apple's also going through a similar transition, was what I heard in that interview. So I think it's just important to take a step back. I also thought what Tim Cook said at the very end of the interview is one of the themes that we've been talking about for 2019, which is this horizontal digitization and connectivity between sectors. He basically said, in 5 to 10 years, you might look at Apple and call them a healthcare company. So I thought that the point that Pete made was a good one.